Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another YouTube video. I hope you've all had a great Thursday so far. Today we're going to be diving into our daily cryptocurrency market update, and we're really going to be taking a look at what took place yesterday, some of the data that was revealed by the Federal Reserve, because of course this has had a huge impact on not just the cryptocurrency market, but markets across the board, as we saw the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which monitors inflation, come out at 7% higher than the previous month. We had suggested that this was indeed going to be the case in yesterday's video. This saw a weak dollar and saw equities, the stock market, commodities continue to rise. And of course, cryptocurrency is a part of that, as it's now more tethered to the kind of global macro economic events that take place. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to be discussing this. We're going to be going over to Lynn Alden's Twitter and looking at a few things that she's suggesting may come in the not too distant future. Also talk a little bit about China and how, even though perhaps we may be seeing a tightening of things like bond buybacks and stimulus in the US, places like China are actually starting to sort of open that tap a little bit and see a little bit more stimulus flowing into their economy after a sort of a tight 2021. And we're also going to talk about potentially what could come for the dollar. And this is the most important chart that there is, ladies and gentlemen. At the top, you've got the US dollar, and at the bottom, you've got Bitcoin. And you can see just how correlated these are. I mean, yesterday was a perfect example. We saw an uptick for Bitcoin. A huge wick down here, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that I was really watching. I aped into a number of altcoins yesterday. Of course, it dragged Cardano, ETHEREUM with it. We think ETHEREUM may run into a little bit of turmoil given sort of the development side of things. And of course, we saw the dollar gain quite a lot of weakness because the CPI essentially monitors inflation, Consumer Price Index. I think inflation is far higher than 7%. I think that, you know, for argument's sake, we're just going to look at the government stats. I think governments across the board lie to you, and that it doesn't pay me or benefit me to say that, certainly from a channel point of view. But it's the truth. And I think people are largely waking up to this across the board. You know, it's a new kind of age that we're moving into where people are a lot more awake. It's the age of awakening that we're kind of moving into, where people are kind of going, hang on, let's start questioning a lot of what we've been kind of told and the narrative that we've been fed from a child until now. And some people take it in different ways, but we're getting a little bit off topic. Let's get back to where we were. So, dollar weak with a higher inflation rate, because of course what this is essentially monitoring at its core is your purchasing power, the dollar's purchasing power. So the dollar is 7% less valuable than it previously was. And people need to, when I stress the importance of investing, not only has it changed my life, it can change yours. And the reason being is because the fiat system that most people don't have a choice other than to be in because they get paid it in their wage, holding that money does not serve you. You get taxed on an inflationary level. It's a global tax that takes place, and no one is immune to it. Anybody that holds fiat gets caught up by this. And this is one reason that Bitcoin really came into existence. And it's why the charts for the dollar and Bitcoin look the way that they do, because they're adversaries. And this is something that we're watching. And this is why we're paying, I know this is a cryptocurrency market update, we pay so much attention to the world around us. And you, if you want to be a serious investor, I understand there's a lot of people in crypto that have just thrown money in Shiba Inu or something and expected to get rich within a month. But if you want to be a serious investor, you need to start getting up to date with finance, how it works. It's very confusing, but it makes sense in a way that it doesn't. But we'll try and sort of keep you on the straight and narrow. So what does this mean? Well, Jerome came out and said that essentially it's a priority, them tackling inflation, and that they will, if they have to, they've already stated they may up interest rates 3 times in 2022, but they may increase that number of interest rate hikes. They're playing a zero-sum game almost, in the sense that they can't up interest rates too much because they cripple themselves in the sense that they have debt. The governments have debt, and if they up the interest rates, the servicing of that debt becomes more to the tunes of billions. I mean, even a 1% rate rise, I think, was 280 something billion more that they'd have to pay and service. So they can't do too much, but they have to be seen to be doing something, because the dollar has and the Fed have egg on their face, and they can't sort of let that slide. Certainly, given what took place in March 2020, which is still one of the most significant events in Bitcoin and all markets history, given the huge, it's the whole reason this run took place. was because of what they had to do as a result of March 2020 and everything shutting down. They had to print a lot of money to stimulate the economy. We're seeing a bit of a pullback from that. We've run into headwind. But this may have given Bitcoin and a lot of other assets out there green light. And I'm going to show you why. Even though you've got people like Paul Tudor-Jones saying that the Fed has a lot of catching up to do to fight inflation, and its efforts will put many assets at risk. And we've gone over the fundamental reasons for why. If they up interest rates, money becomes more expensive, and this wanes against. It's like a seesaw basically that's taking place. I hope you guys are sort of getting the message. But what I want to do is refer you to Lynn Alden's Twitter. If you're not already following Lynn Alden and you're interested in becoming an investor in anything, she is absolutely amazing. She's my go-to Twitter and any sort of content that she releases, I'm there listening to it, because this is a extremely smart individual, in my opinion, at the top of their game. And she did a little thread that we'll read, and then we'll get into some more interesting data. Some data that suggests the dollar may be in for a bit of a bearish period, given prior indicators. December CPI comes out tomorrow and has a decent shot of being at 7% plus. So this is what she had previously already said. And then this, of course, was the follow-on. Headline CPI for December came in at just over 7% this morning, a 40-year high. And this is the highest inflation we've had since 1982, which is hugely significant as the world is in a different position to where it was back then. And there's different pressures that are put on it as a result. And she goes on to sort of, she has a thread here. She's talking about rent and owners' equivalent rent continue to be a key driver of headline and core CPI, and they are operating with a lag versus actual rent and house prices increasing. Headline year-over-year CPI will probably peak within the first several months of 2022, but then also probably remain elevated for quite a while after energy, labour and housing. Both the inflation transitory folk and the inflation is structural folk will call it a win. They already are, and this is one of the funny things about it. Inflation is not transitory. It's been here. It's kind of how the monetary system works. Periods of higher inflation are transitory, but inflation is a base fundamental to our economy at this point. It's just how things work, and there's periods of higher inflation and lower inflation, and we're seeing a period of high inflation at the moment, which is why you've seen, Apple, $3 trillion stock. I think it's 8 times its earnings or something. Stock market is insanely overvalued, but this is just the world that we live in. Does this lead down the road to a huge crash? And crypto is not going to be immune to that. One question I get often is, well, what happens if we have a recession? Crypto takes the hit with it. March 2020 should have taught you that lesson. But one thing that it's really interesting me saying this, and it's a topic that what I would like to do in my Discord, not just in my Discord, but on the channel and with the sort of community members that follow me, is get into some of these discussions. You know, if we have a recession or something serious takes place, you know, even though that would ultimately be bearish for Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto space, they get dragged along with it as they're tethered to it, and this is what we're showing you with these videos. But it would almost be like a phoenix rising from the ashes, in the sense that it was really what Bitcoin was created to do, to untether itself and to be its own monetary system away from the Federal Reserve and the fiat systems that have just, they're a raw deal, they're a bad deal essentially. But that's for a completely another video, another debate. Even though this is taking place, we're actually seeing, and the Fed are sort of threatening us with these deflationary pressures, we're actually seeing China start to stimulate a little bit more. This is from Lynn again. While everyone is focusing on the US, on what the US is doing, China has started to stimulate a bit after a tight 2021, setting up a potential west to east theme for 2022 in terms of equity performance. So the game is rigged in the sense that, you know, Jerome isn't an idiot. People have got this idea, this fascinating idea that they're smarter than the Federal Reserve and that the Federal Reserve are idiots. Yes, what they seem to be doing may be idiotic, but I would argue it's almost deliberate, in the sense that, you know, they know what they're doing. They're in a tricky position. And I wouldn't like to be in Jerome Powell's seat, that's for sure. Or maybe I would, you know, I'd probably, I don't know. Anyway, well off topic. And this is another brilliant one. So we want dollar weakness, which equals Bitcoin strength. That's what we want. And this is another one from Lynn. please, honestly, she's a brilliant individual to follow. Over the past 20 years, whenever the dollar index hit weekly RSI of 70, overbought and then rolled over into negative momentum, that has usually a rather persistent bearish move in the dollar from that point. So what she's arguing here is when the RSI has been at 70, you're going to have to forgive me, guys. It's still pretty early. I've not long got up after quite a late night. Every time we've got to this sort of overbought range on the RSI, which we have recently done, typically what you'll get is a bearish period that kind of ensues after this for the dollar, so a downturn. Now, that may indeed be the case. There are fundamental reasons why this could be happening, and of course, this is good for Bitcoin. One of those reasons potentially could be the fact that, back to sort of what Lynn was saying and what we already know, is inflation actually next month could come out even higher. Does that then have the same effect as what it did this month and we see further downturn for the dollar? I would argue that's quite likely. So we're playing this kind of seesaw game at the moment. And ultimately, Bitcoin is very tethered to the dollar. And of course, your altcoins are tethered to that. You do have altcoins such as Cardano that have their own fundamental reasons for doing well. If Bitcoin sees not a period of trauma, but a decent sort of period of even minor recovery, that will allow some of your altcoins with amazing fundamental reasons for doing well to excel. And certainly Cardano is one of those on my radar. I think Ethereum, as somebody who still holds a lot of Ethereum, you can go back to the start of this channel. We were buying Ethereum up. I think publicly on the channel, probably around about $120. We've actually bought it cheaper than that myself. And it's done very, very well. Still hold my Ethereum, but I think they're going to run into turmoil. I think they've dropped the ball, essentially. I think they've missed the mark here, and they've failed to deliver on a lot of the things that they promised. All blockchains have done that, by the way. It's not just an Ethereum trait, but this, given how fast this space is moving and how many rising layer ones you've got, people are going to move away from Ethereum given how expensive it is to use, and certainly when they have a real competitor. One reason that a lot of people don't use Solana is due to the uptime. They're not going to put, certainly these big funds, millions of dollars worth of value into something like Solana, not knowing if it's going to be able to deal with that. Whereas Ethereum, one reason they choose Ethereum is because of its uptime. It's got a great uptime, but you've got projects like Cardano that are rising that have seen 4 years of consistent uptime, and that are also offering the same services at a cheaper rate with potentially higher yields, given it being new. So that's all something to bear in mind. That's what these cryptocurrency market updates are really here for you guys to do. They're here to sort of prick your imaginations in the right direction. I've got something else for you here from Crypto UNT. I'm not going to say one of the words, but he's essentially saying, do you really think a Wales BTC fund would be at an all-time high if this bull market was over? The bull market is not over. Be patient and don't look at charts 24/7. Easier said than done. Certainly, I look at charts all day. That's because it's kind of I wouldn't say it's my job, my hobby, my passion. It's something I'm heavily invested in. We are all in crypto, or I am certainly all in crypto. But he's got a real point in what he's saying here. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of strong hands in the Bitcoin market. Bitcoin holds or shrinks all markets in with the crypto space. And this ties in with, for example, we saw miners of Bitcoin, which are typically net sellers, actually purchasing Bitcoin, which is very interesting. So that suggests that Bitcoin to them is undervalued, and they're happy to step in, and they're not happy to sell at these prices. They're waiting for a higher price to sell into. And that ties in with everything we've said on this channel. We believe, and we've said this every time there's a downturn, we get the same sort of bearish period and bearish momentum, but we always rise out of it. Bitcoin has shown nothing but resilience in the 13 years that it's been on this planet, and at $2 trillion in terms of a market cap for the entire space, given the scope of the usage and value that it's going to capture, we're very, very early. And I want you guys to remember that. And that's what these updates are also really all about, getting you guys to really grasp the direction that this market is moving in. There's never been such an amazing time to be alive. We could be on the very cusp of value being redefined. Remember, Adam Smith, one of the most influential economic writers of all time, said that money is just an ideology. And we've shown you examples of that in previous videos where we looked at the fact that sticks at one point we used, they were called tallies. It's where we get the word from and where we get the saying the short end of the stick from. We used previously as money, and we've got a shift taking place again today, like we've seen throughout history. So that's all I have for you in this video, guys. I'm going to love and leave you on that note. If you've enjoyed the content, a like is always appreciated. So is a comment. Remember to subscribe. Also head over to my Twitter, @RealAllinCrypto is my Twitter handle. We do have a Discord for anybody looking to join, and of course we do have a Cardano stake pool that we operate with 1.6 million Cardano in there. Huge achievement for me, huge achievement for the channel, and a huge thank you to each and every one of you that are supporting me via that way. Thank you very much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next YouTube video.